We've all heard of D-Day, the massive Allied invasion that helped turn the tide of World War II. But far fewer know about Dieppe. 2 years earlier, Allied forces, mostly Canadian, launched a raid on the French port of Dieppe. It was meant to test German defences. Instead, it became a bloodbath. Poorly planned, rushed, and facing brutal resistance, the raid lasted just hours, but left thousands dead, wounded, or captured. This is the story of Dieppe, the forgotten disaster that helped shape the success of D-Day. By 1942, the Allies were under pressure. The Soviet Union was bleeding on the Eastern Front. Stalin demanded a second front in Western Europe. Churchill and the British High Command knew they weren't yet ready for a full-scale invasion, but they needed to test the waters. The target was Dieppe, a French port town on the English Channel. The plan was for a raid, not a full-scale invasion. The idea was to capture it briefly, destroy German defences and radar installations, then withdraw the troops. But even this smaller objective was dangerously ambitious. The bulk of the ground forces would come from Canada, nearly 5,000 men, mostly from the 2nd Canadian Infantry Division. They were joined by British commandos and about 50 US Army Rangers, their first action in Europe. From the beginning, the Dieppe Raid, codenamed Operation Jubilee, was flawed. The plan called for a frontal assault on a fortified port, the kind of place the Germans had spent years preparing to defend. Surprise was critical, but it was lost before the battle had even begun. As the Allied ships approached Dieppe in the early hours of August 19, 1942, they encountered a German convoy. A firefight broke out. Alarms were raised. The element of surprise was already gone. The beaches of Dieppe were narrow and overlooked by cliffs, with machine gun nests, artillery, and barbed wire. When the first Canadian troops landed at 5 a.m, they ran straight into a wall of steel. The attack quickly turned into a massacre. Infantry were cut down by crossfire as they struggled across the beach. Tanks from the Calgary Regiment landed late and got stuck on the soft pebbles. They couldn't climb the seawall, and most were destroyed or abandoned. Communication was a nightmare. Support units didn't know what was happening. Reinforcements landed into the middle of chaos. Commandos had some success on the flanks, but it wasn't enough to turn the tide. The main assault stalled, then collapsed. By mid-morning, it was clear that the raid had failed. Orders were given to withdraw, but even that was nearly impossible under the constant German fire. Men swarmed to landing craft under machine gun fire. Others were left behind. Some refused to surrender and kept fighting to the last bullet. In just 9 hours, over 3,600 of the 6,000 Allied troops who landed became casualties. 916 Canadians were killed. Nearly 2,000 more were taken prisoner. It was one of the darkest days in Canadian military history. Only a few objectives were achieved. A radar station was raided, some intelligence was gathered, but none of it justified the cost. At the time, the Dieppe Raid was a PR disaster. But in the aftermath, military planners began asking hard questions and learning hard lessons. Lesson 1, never land directly on a fortified port. Lesson 2, armour needs better landing support. And Lesson 3, naval and air support must be overwhelming. 2 years later, those lessons would shape Operation Overlord, the D-Day landings at Normandy. There, the Allies didn't try to capture a port. They built floating harbours and mulberries. They established complete air superiority, and they rehearsed it endlessly. The men who fought at Dieppe were not failures. They were brave, sent into an impossible situation. Their sacrifice helped prevent even greater losses in future battles. Today, memorials stand at Dieppe and in Canada, but many still do not know their story. The Dieppe Raid was a tragedy, but it was not meaningless. In war, failure can teach more than victory, and behind every strategic lesson are thousands of lives forever changed.